I've always hated to say the words, I'm happy. I've always had this feeling of trepidation. Am I using that word right? Keep speaking. I've always had this feeling of trepidation that whenever I admit to myself that I feel happy, something or someone is going to sprint over to me and snatch it away. I don't believe in God, but I guess I believe in karma. In a silly way, I guess. I've done so many bad things in my life to other people. I've used women. I've manipulated people to get what I want. I'm not proud of myself, and now whenever I get that feeling that things are going right in my life, I just start constantly looking over my shoulder. I drive more carefully. I'm just waiting for some cosmic being to notice the positive energy that is emanating from me and be like, "Hey, this guy's not supposed to be happy. We fucked up." Then he just comes and takes it away. You used trepidation correctly. What bad things have you done? Well, you already know my history with my last girlfriend, or maybe you don't. Basically, she was super annoying and insecure. She would get pissed off over the littlest things. I gave a coworker a ride home because her ride fell through and Jess flipped out about it. Literally ruined the whole night because I gave a female coworker a ride home. I wasn't even attracted to the girl. So I broke up with her and used her as my whore up until I met Sanem and I dropped her. The things I made her do were horrible. And she got nothing out of it. And I would look at her and ask her, "Why the fuck do you keep coming back here?" And she wouldn't have a fucking answer, Caleb. So I just kept doing it until I couldn't anymore. And the worst part is I enjoyed every second of it. I enjoyed exploiting her love for me. I enjoyed taking something from this girl and giving her nothing in return. Do you understand? I understand. And you understand why I'm afraid to say that I'm happy? Yes. Things are good. I'm happy with Sanem. I started school this week and I'm feeling optimistic about that as well. I feel patient for once, like I can look forward to tomorrow without having to think about next year or 10 years from now. I hate how much that scares me. This feeling of contentment can't last, can it? I still dislike college, don't get me wrong. I have the most mild of interests in my major, but I think I can see happiness in my future if I stick with it. Do you think I sound crazy? It sounds to me like you're putting a lot of faith and trust into your relationship with Sanem. You're happy with her right now, and you're focusing on that aspect of your life and ignoring the other things that you're missing out on. Those things being life fulfillment of your own goals, your sex fetishes that you aren't satisfying, any of the things that you know you want but are not getting. You're choosing to adopt her dream and make that a reality, and you think you can find happiness out of that. A master's degree in psychology, the white picket fence, this nice house, big front yard, kids running around in the sun. Her family coming over every night for dinner and other extracurricular activities. That's her dream, not yours. And what I'm saying is, it'll work out fine if she continues to live up to your expectations, but if she fucks up, that whole facade that you've built up around yourself as your wall of protection, or distraction rather, from the things you want most, that wall will come crashing down the moment you realize you chose the wrong girl. Which I'm not saying you have. I've never met Sanem, and the way you talk about her, you seem like you really like her. All I'm saying is, you better be very careful. Caleb, what do you mean by living up to my expectations? What does she have to do to accomplish that? I don't know. Be a good human being? Basically, you want a role model. You want to have a partner that will prevent you from being your usual horrible self. You have these urges that you don't want to act on, and as long as she's being the great girlfriend that you've come to know and love, you won't. In my opinion, this is a very unsafe gamble. The likelihood of you not finding out that she isn't perfect is small. You're going to find something wrong with her, and when you do, she'll be knocked off the pedestal that you've placed her on. All of a sudden, she'll be just another girl, and then you're fucked. Shaun sat at the table. He had no more to say. Everything Caleb had just told him was completely accurate. Somewhere deep down inside, Shaun knew all of it. Caleb had just brought it to light. He asked himself if it was already happening. He wondered if the pedestal he had placed him on was already starting to chip away. He thought of telling Caleb about his birthday. Shaun was scared too. He knew that if he spoke it out loud, those thoughts and feelings he was denying about the whole event would be acknowledged. He thought about that day. This time last Friday, I was sitting on the steps of some building in New York, watching Sanem talk to her friend for 30 minutes. That was after she had already kept me waiting for an hour, and before she treated me as if she barely knew me when we walked into the Persian restaurant. The flaws were coming to light. Sanem wouldn't be perfect much longer. Shaun could feel himself start to panic. A crazy thought entered his head. "Do you think I could love her until I finish college?" Shaun blurted out. Caleb looked at him as if he completely understood the train of thought that led Shaun to ask that strange question. His response was sincere. "You're going to school for psychology. I've already told you an associate or bachelor degree is practically worthless in that field. You would have to stay in school for at least a master's, if not a doctorate. A master's is about 5 years away from you. A sinking feeling hit the pit of Shaun's stomach. New subject, Shaun practically yelled the demand. Okay, Caleb said. Shaun squirmed in his seat. He looked around the restaurant. They were eating at IHOP. The notion was funny to Shaun. He wondered how many other patrons came in to talk about the things he talked about. Suddenly, Richard crept into his head. Have you talked to Richard yet? Shaun asked. Yeah, I spoke to him yesterday. Did he tell you how he's already banging someone up there, and she got a nose job? He failed to mention that he was banging someone. Shaun snorted. It's like pulling teeth from that guy to get answers from him. She must be ugly. What do you think? Otherwise, he would have told us about her. I don't know what you two talk about, but I don't typically get on the phone with Rich and ask him about his sex life. Well, what the fuck do you two talk about? What he's doing in New York, how his classes are, has he learned anything pertaining to film that he found useful or interesting? So boring shit. That's cool. Excuse me for wanting to know if my friend is getting late. There's nothing wrong with wanting to know if your friend is getting late in New York. It just doesn't happen to interest me, Caleb said with a small smile. You know, I used to think Richard was gay. Why? His seemingly lack of interest in females. Me and his parents actually used to make jokes about it. I had actually had the scenario in my head that I had prepared myself for. It was of him coming on to me and you know, him telling me that he had feelings for me. I had a defense ready for it and everything. The sick thing is, I was always worried that instead of Rich coming out and telling me he wanted to fuck me, he'd be too ashamed of himself and just end up killing himself. That's why I hate when he gets quiet sometimes. I know there's something going on in his head that he's dealing with, and I want to be there for him. I love the guy, you know? Caleb shook his head in awe. You ever think that not everyone uses the same coping mechanisms as you? You're like an open fucking book. A stranger could walk up to you and ask you your deepest insecurity, and you would tell them. You welcome the chance to talk about yourself and the stuff that's bothering you, but not everyone is like you. Some people, Richard for instance, find it easier to deal with things on their own. So you're saying that he's ashamed of the ugly girl that he's fucking in New York, and instead of wanting to talk about how ashamed he is to the people closest to him, like me, he'd rather take the burden upon himself and deal with it that way? Shaun asked in a somewhat joking manner. Sure, man. If that's what you want to hear. I personally haven't seen this girl, so I can't say what Richard's excuse is for not telling you about it. Maybe he just didn't think it was important. I'll stick with my theory. Shaun's phone vibrated. He looked down to see who it was. J-Boy's texted me. He announced to the restaurant at large. He read the text. Your dad just walked in. He walks so much like your brother, it's ridiculous. Joseph. Mr. Hunt glided into the store. He smiled warmly at each person he passed. His eyes searched the area and locked onto Joseph. He waved in a slow clockwise circle and approached him. Joseph was sitting behind the tech support counter. How are you doing, Mr. Hunt? Long time no see, Joe said. I'm okay. No complaints. You know, I have to tell you, I think it was the last time I saw you were trying that beard out, and I didn't know what to think of it. Now that I've let it marinate for a bit, good choice. Beard is a good choice, Mr. Hunt said with a prominent thumbs up. Joseph laughed. I'm glad you approve. Recognition from someone such as yours stature goes a long way in making a young kid like me feel special, Joseph said. Mr. Hunt laughed humorously. You know, I've always thought you were the funniest of the group. Christopher might be the best looking, Shaun might be the most charismatic, and Richard might be the most versatile. But what is a comedy group without the comedic mastermind? Mr. Hunt said with a devilish grin. I've been known to tell a funny joke or two. You know, I was actually thinking of you earlier today. It's kind of funny that you came in, Joe said. Where are you now? May I ask why? Do you know a Mr. Stanley Pullman? Joe asked. Mr. Hunt laughed haughtily. I do happen to know a lawyer by that name, yes, Mr. Hunt said. Do you know if there's something wrong with him or what? Does he have dementia? And is he still working as a lawyer? I can't imagine how he's finding clients. He's like crazy, Joe said. Mr. Hunt's eyes twinkled with humor. He covered his mouth with his hand to hide his wide grin. What makes you say that? He asked. 6 months ago, he came in for something and ended up leaving his cane here. That was 6 months ago. Today, he came in with a brand new cane looking for the old one that he had left. When he gets the old one, purposefully or not, he ends up leaving the brand new one, Joe said. Mr. Hunt laughed and gave a shrug. Sounds like Staples went out on this deal, he said. That's a good point, Joe said. So do you know if he has dementia or something? Stanley Pullman is very old. When I first moved here 10 years ago, he had been old. Now he's even older. Wonderful person, though, once you get to know him. As for dementia, I run into him at court, and I say, hey, how's it going? And then I leave it at that. I don't come to him for advice on cases as much as I used to, if you know what I mean, Mr. Hunt said. I can definitely understand that train of thought, Joe said. Well, anyway, let me get what I came in here for. I'm sure you'll tell the rest of your comedy group I said hello. Especially that knucklehead son of mine, Mr. Hunt said. Will do, Mr. Hunt. It was nice seeing you, Joe said. Likewise. Mr. Hunt inclined his head and walked off in a slow, wide gait. Fucking cool guy, Shaun's father, Joe thought. He pulled out his phone and looked at the time. He had 2 more minutes before his break was over. Shaun had texted him back. Oh, yeah? Tell him I said hi, I guess. Or don't. I could give a fuck less. Joe laughed and texted him back. Too late, he already left. He said hi, though. He got out of his chair and walked to the nearest computer terminal. He played with his phone as he waited to clock back in. 2 minutes passed and he clocked in and returned back to the tech counter. Joseph stood attentively as a customer approached him. He's a short Hispanic man. I'm looking for this game system with the Blu-ray player, the Hispanic man said, stopping in front of Joseph. Are you referring to the PlayStation 3? We don't have that, Joe said. What do you mean you don't have it? The man said. His voice was thick with a Mexican accent. We don't have game consoles here. We used to, but we don't anymore, Joe said, somewhat irritated. The man let out an exasperated breath and stared up into Joe's eyes. You know, you're bad, he said. How am I bad? Joe asked. I've been here 15 minutes walking around, and I've seen you over here just playing with your phone. You're not supposed to be on your phone. You're supposed to be helping customers, the man said testily. Joe's anger flared. That would be true if not for the fact that I was on break. I can't really help you out when I'm not on the clock. I mean, I could, but that's just something I can't really see myself doing. The man shook his head. No. You are not very good. Customer assistance, you're supposed to be working. You're not supposed to be on your phone. You're not very good. I was on my break. I do not work when I am on my break. Is there anything else I can help you with? Joe asked. Yeah, what's your name? The man put his hands on his hips. My name is Joe, Joe said. He debated whether or not to add insult to injury by pointing out the fact that he was wearing a name tag. He chose against it. What's your last name? The customer asked. More annoyance from Joseph. You definitely don't need that, he said. Don't tell me what I need. I want your last name, the man said angrily. Why? Joe asked. I'm going to report you. You're no good, the man said. I'm not going to give you my last name. I'm sorry. I'm just not going to do that, Joe said, crossing his arms. During the argument, Joe could see Jimmy approach slowly out of the corner of his eye. He stopped a few feet away, not wanting to interrupt. The Hispanic man turned around and stormed off towards the exit. Joe looked at Jimmy and rolled his eyes. He called after the customer. You want my social security number too? Joe asked. Jimmy approached Joseph laughing. I can't get over how you talk to customers, man. It's incredible, he said. I just hate when customers think I have to put up with their shit just because they're the customer, Joe said. Yeah, but what about the management? What if Kelly caught you doing that shit? Jimmy asked. I'm relatively untouchable. They would have to call in the fucking cavalry to fucking fire me. I've been here for 7 years. I would have to do something really fucked up to get fired here, Joe said. Jimmy shook his head. That's cool, man. He started laughing. Do you need my social security number too? He repeated. Yo, you heard that? Joe asked with a smile. Where do you get that shit? Your fucking comedy group? Jimmy asked. Some have held me responsible for putting the comedy in young folks' comedy. Just some, Joe said humbly. Well, anyway, you're still coming over to watch the game? The TV my dad got is off the chain, man. HD and everything, Jimmy said. I like the sound of that. I'll be there, Joe said. Cool, man. We'll get drunk, Jimmy said. He bumped fists with Joseph and wandered off. Joe leaned against the counter and surveyed the store. There wasn't much going on. He looked over at the cash register. Dana was working. She was staring across the store at him. He had no clue how long she had been doing so. Their eyes met and she smiled at him. Alarm went off in his head. He looked away from her and walked to the nearest customer he could find. He helped the customer mindlessly as he tried to distract himself. Dana had become a pressing problem over the past several weeks. For some reason, the girl had set her sights on Joseph. She had become extremely adamant on having him, yet there were certain factors that prevented Joseph from letting her succeed. The first one was that she was a minor, 17 years old. The second problem was Jennifer. He had made it clear to Jennifer that the two were not in an exclusive relationship. The breakup with Kirsten still felt like it happened a month or two ago. He had no intention of going into another boyfriend/girlfriend relationship as long as Kirsten's shadow loomed over her. Even still, Jennifer felt like a girlfriend. He saw her at least twice a week, less now that she moved back to college in Philadelphia. She texted him every day. They went out on dates. Dana turned 18 next week. She had made sure to inform Joseph of that. Joseph looked at her from the corner of an aisle. She was attractive for a teenager. Blonde hair, slightly above average tits, and most importantly, willing. He remembered how he had felt when he realized he would no longer be having sex with Kirsten. He had planned on waiting for another option. Kirsten set the bar high. Whenever the two had gone out, he remembered how often she would get complimented on her looks. He hated the idea of going below that. Joseph made it through 1 week before turning to Jennifer. She had liked him in high school. He had been considering the option back then, but he had not had a girlfriend for the entirety of his high school career. Joseph knew she wasn't the most attractive of girls, but it would have been a start. He would gain some experience. Then Kirsten fell into his lap out of nowhere. He didn't talk to Jennifer for 3 years. Then he texted her when he broke up with Kirsten. Within 3 weeks of the initial contact, Joseph had taken her virginity. He had felt guilty. He had taken her as a consolation prize, used her for sex, and refused to name her as his girlfriend. The idea of doing anything worse to her haunted him. Dana scared him. Joseph tried to shrug it off. He would cross that bridge when he came to it. He worked the rest of his shift doing his best to avoid her. He replied to Jennifer's frequent texts and felt like a better person because of it. After several more hours, Joe clocked out and headed home. He looked forward to spending the next day at Jimmy's house. No girls, no work, no problems. Just football and beer with a friend. A warm feeling of anticipation spread through Joe's body as he drove home. He followed his nightly routine with effortless precision. He ate leftovers. He took a shower. He brushed his teeth. He texted Jennifer goodnight. He watched an episode of Mad Men. He closed his eyes and went to sleep. Joseph arrived at Jimmy's house the next day at around noon. He found the couch in front of the TV to be exceptionally uncomfortable. He told Jimmy so. The TV itself was a 40-inch Sony flat screen. It was mounted on the wall above a large fireplace. Joe sat down and got himself comfortable as he waited for Jimmy to return from the kitchen. He walked in shortly after, holding a large bottle of Captain Morgan in one hand and a Coke in the other. "This is what we're drinking today," Jimmy announced to Joe. "Rum and Coke? What happened to beer?" Joe asked. "I'm out," Jimmy shrugged. "I didn't feel like going to the liquor store, so this is what we're drinking," he said. "I feel pretty indifferent about it," Joe said. "Good," Jimmy said, taking a seat beside Joe. Jimmy poured 2 glasses and handed one to Joseph. He took a sip and nodded his head. He gave Jimmy a thumbs up. He hadn't had a rum and Coke since he had turned 21. He found it odd that he realized that. He sat back with his drink and put his feet up on the table in front of him. "Nice, right?" Jimmy asked. "Very nice," Joe replied. "Beats fucking work," Jimmy said. They sat in silence as the football game started. It was the Eagles against the Redskins. The Eagles had won the coin toss and were about to start with the opening kick. The couch was extremely comfortable. Joe took another sip of his drink and made a note to enjoy this day as much as possible. "Fuck," Jimmy blurted out and got to his feet. "What?" "What's up?" Joe asked, breaking his attention away from the TV. "I forgot the chips," Jimmy said as he headed back into the kitchen. Joseph laughed silently to himself. Chips, he thought to himself, chuckling. Chips were at the center of every young folks' comedy joke. He thought of the memory of that moment. He had been editing a recent video with Richard at his house. It was senior year. As they neared the conclusion of the video, Joseph had mentioned going out and getting some food. Rich came off as reluctant to leave his house and told Joe that he had food to offer him there. Joe asked him what food was in the house. Richard thought about it for a moment and said chips. That interaction sparked a years-long inside joke. Whenever something went wrong or someone in the group would receive bad news, the person would shrug their shoulders and quote Richard. They'd say, "Shit, well at least I got chips." Joe had tried to explain the humor of that to several people, his girlfriend, his brother, even some of his co-workers. The story was only funny to the members of YSC. It had marked the beginning of the seclusion that they were all working so hard to get out of, some more than others. Jimmy returned with a large bag of Ruffles and a container of French onion dip. He plopped them on the table in front of them and said, "Enjoy." Joe laughed. "You should have invited Scumbag over for this." Jimmy snorted, "Fuck that," and listened to his fucking Plenty of Fish stories the whole time. "Seeing him at work is enough for me," he said. "Yeah. You should have seen the one he brought in the other day. I told you about her, right?" Joe asked. Jimmy nodded his head. "I could give a fuck less." "You know who he's trying to fuck now?" Jimmy didn't wait for a reply. "Dana," he said. Joe's eyebrows rose. "Scumbag's trying to fuck Dana?" "Yeah, he was bragging about how he was over her house a couple weeks ago. They hooked up or something, but she wouldn't let him fuck her because she's still a minor. Fucking disgusting, right?" Jimmy asked as he reached for the bag of Ruffles. The game was well underway. The Redskins had the ball and were making a decent drive up the field. They were at the 40-yard line. Yeah, that's pretty fucking disgusting. So he didn't fuck her, Joe asked. Nah, but he probably will once she turns 18 next week. According to him, at least. She just graduated high school. Jimmy said, shaking his head. That guy will fuck anything. Yeah, Joe said in agreement. The information triggered something in the back of Joe's head. He tried to ignore it and focus on the game, but it nagged at him. Every week, Scumbag would walk into work with a new story about how he met some girl off of some dating website and had sex with her. It had never bothered Joseph because he knew all the girls that he could possibly get with would be ugly and most likely disease-ridden. So he would listen to the stories along with Jimmy and laugh at the guy behind his back. The fact that he had hooked up with Dana bothered Joe for some reason. So what's good with you? We haven't talked in a while. You're not in school this semester, right? Jimmy asked. Correct. I'm taking this semester off just to gather my bearings and find out what college I'm going to transfer to. I wanted to go to school in Cali, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen, Joe said. Why not? Jimmy asked. My credits won't transfer over to the schools, Joe lied. He didn't want to go alone. He had flown out to California last summer with Richard. They had looked at schools together for 2 weeks. It had come to Joseph as a huge shock when he logged onto Facebook and discovered Richard was enrolled in the new school. That sucks, man. What's the point of going to a community college if the fucking credits don't transfer to the schools you want to go to? Jimmy asked, annoyed. Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. But it looks like I might end up going to school in New York. My friend got accepted to this college called the New School. That'd be pretty cool if I got in there, Joe said. Yeah, that'd be awesome to go to college with a friend. Be roommates and shit. I feel you, Jimmy said. Joseph nodded his head but added nothing else to the conversation. The two watched the TV in silence. They took an occasional sip of their drink and ate more of the chips. I'm liking the rum and coke. I never got a chance to drink it, but I kind of want to start doing it more often now, Joe said finally. Right? I thought the same thing. That shit is left over from a party I went to a couple nights ago. Everybody was drinking beer and vodka. The rum was barely touched. The guy who threw the party gave it to me on my way out, Jimmy said. So I'm drinking a free bottle of rum right now, Joe asked. Well, it's not free, but I didn't fucking pay for it, Jimmy said, laughing. Fuck. It tastes better now for some reason, Joe said. The two laughed half-heartedly and continued watching the game. Commercials came and went. The Eagles scored a touchdown which sparked a brief chatter of comment from the two young men. Time passed. First quarter ended. Second came and went. During halftime, Jimmy made a confession. So I have to put my 2 weeks in tomorrow, Jimmy said quietly. Yeah? You got a new job? Joe asked. Nah, me and my dad are moving to Virginia. He found a job down there that's going to help him pay for the divorce, Jimmy said. Well, you should see if they can transfer you to a store close to where you're staying, Joe said. Yeah, I'll probably do that, Jimmy said. When are you moving? Joe asked. My dad's ready to go now. He's actually down in Virginia today getting the house ready for us. So probably as soon as my 2 weeks is up, I'll be out of here. Joe hid his disappointment well. He had always liked Jimmy ever since he started his employment at Staples. That sucks, man. I'm going to miss working with you, Joe said. Yeah, same here, man. I'm most likely going to hate the people I meet down there. No one's chill anymore, Jimmy said. Yeah, no one is chill, Joe said. Yeah, man, that sucks. I don't really have many friends at Cosi, but if one of you guys were to leave, I'd be pretty fucking depressed. Not that this guy's on the same level as YSC, I can just understand where you're coming from. It's hard to actually like people. At least for me it is. Christopher took a long pull on his joint and did his best to blow the smoke in the direction of his window. Right? I feel the same fucking way. Like, you guys are the only guys I actually relate to. Everyone else that I meet in my life, I just don't know how to get along with. I mean, it's not that I can't get along with them. The people that I work with, I get along fine for the most part, but we don't have anything in common, besides the fact that we all work at the same place, Joe said. I feel the same way. For one, I work with mainly bitches. Young bitches and old bitches. The young bitches are fucking idiots who think about what color their fucking nails should be next, and the old bitches are just fat and disgusting. Out of the few guys that I work with, I mean, they're cool and all, but really the only people I like hanging out with are you guys. Sam and, well, fuck, that's like it. Chris laughed and passed the joint to Joe. I don't know. Do you feel bad about it? Joe asked. Chris thought about it and shrugged. I don't really think about it. I get along with people just fine. I was hanging out with Dennis and MC Green a couple of weeks ago. We smoked weed and talked shit. It was cool. I didn't have a problem with it, but if I had a choice between hanging out with them or just smoking weed by myself, I think I'm pretty indifferent. Yeah, so am I. Fuck people anyway, Joe said. Agreed, Chris said. The two sat silently in Christopher's room. The place reeked of weed. 2 fans blew noisily in the direction of the large, open window. Christopher sat on his bed. Joe, the adjacent couch. Christopher took a swig from his water bottle as Joe lightly coughed smoke out of his lungs. So you heard from Richie Boy yet? Chris asked. I did. I spoke to him a couple of weeks ago, Joe said. How's he doing? Chris asked. He sounded good. He said some of the classes were pretty cool. That's awesome. Did he tell you why he didn't tell anyone he was leaving? Chris asked with a smirk. Joe snorted. Nah, I didn't bother asking. Richard is weird sometimes. I just try to give him his space. Chris chuckled. He is weird. I'll definitely give you that. Gotta love him, though. I miss him already. Yeah, I miss our whole dynamic. When's the last time the four of us just got together and hung out? Joe asked. Chris looked up at the ceiling and considered the question. It's been a while, he said after a moment. Literally every time that we saw Richard, he was with Caleb last summer. Exactly. I miss the four of us hanging out. Remember when we used to go to Kieran Kelly's house for parties all the time? Joe asked. Of course, those were great fucking times. So many bitches, and they all wanted my fucking man stick, Chris said. And everybody fucking loved us, man. Every single time we went, we would be the life of the party. We were always the funniest guys there and shit, Joe said. Given, Chris nodded his head. Fucking Richard used to do some hilarious shit when he got drunk. Fuck. You know what? You're absolutely right. I miss those fucking days, man. Richard would get drunk and just act like an idiot. Shaun would get drunk and become obnoxious to random people, which was equally funny. And me and you would just watch all of this unfold. Me and you would just go back and forth with banter all night, and people fucking loved it. They did. They most certainly did. It felt good, Chris said. Now we just sit here and smoke weed like losers, Joseph said jokingly. It sparked laughter from Christopher, and Joe quickly joined in. Parties are hard to come by nowadays. Kieran's out of fucking business after he moved in with his mom. We didn't make enough friends in high school. That's where we fucked up, Chris said. You're right. People idolized us in high school, but we isolated ourselves. That was our biggest mistake. We just stayed looking down at everyone as we stood up on our pedestal. Yeah, Chris added sheepishly. Look at where we are now. I work at Cosi as a baker. Yeah, and I'm a fucking tech guy at Staples. Whatever. None of this shit will matter when we finally go out to Cali and forget all this shit, Joe said. When are we doing it, man? Chris asked abruptly. If not next summer, then the summer afterwards. I have to decide if I'm going to go to school in New York with Richard or if I'm just going to hold off and finish school over in LA. Either way, I only have like a year left of school, so we're going in 2 years at the most, Joe said. That's exactly what I want to hear, man. That's awesome. I cannot fucking wait, Chris said. Same here. Have you talked to Kate about it yet? She's on fucking board, man. She wants to go as bad as I do. We're just waiting for the go-ahead. I'm saving up money as we speak. Once she's done school this semester, then she's good to go. You know who I feel like is going to be a wrench in the plan, though? Joe asked as the thought just hit him. Who? Chris asked. Shaun's new Persian bird. I'm willing to bet money that she's going to keep him from coming with us, Joe said. You think so? Definitely. From what Shaun's told me about her, she's got him wrapped around her finger, man. Yeah. He's going to school for psychology, right? Chris asked. Exactly. It sucks because I'm absolutely positive that when me and Rich are done school and ready to head out there, Shaun's going to stay for the Persian. Why can't he just bring her? There's no way she's going to sign up for that. She'll probably laugh at him the minute he even mentions moving to California. Shaun, are you serious? You want to go to California to pursue acting? That's quite funny, Shaun. Now put this outfit on so you can look good in front of my Persian friends. Joe gave his best interpretation of a Persian accent. Chris burst out laughing. Have you met her? He asked. Joe smiled and replied, Nah, I'm just going off of Shaun's impersonation of her. That's fucking hilarious, man. But in all seriousness, you never know if they're going to be together that long. I mean, at least I can. Shaun's pretty unpredictable when it comes to his women, Chris said. He definitely lacks consistency, Joe agreed. Fucking shit, I forgot to tell you. Guess what I've been getting myself into the last couple of weeks? What? Chris asked, interested. Fucking rum and coke. Like, I've been drinking it like all the time now, Joe said. What? Since when? Like 2 weeks. When I was at Jimmy's house, he offered me some. He didn't have any beer, so when I left, he let me take the bottle of rum home because he said he wasn't going to finish it. So I've been fucking with it for like the past many nights. Oh, word? So you're into that shit now? Yo, I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty fucking dope. I'm not gonna say it beats a cold beer on a hot summer day, but it's that chill drink. It's that drink that you can pour for yourself in the comforts of your own home and watch yourself a nice cinema while sipping on that shit, you feel me? I feel you. I might indulge myself and try it out, Chris said. Joe looked at Chris long and hard. He leaned forward, resting his forearms on his knees. His face was inches away from Christopher's. He whispered, "Do so," and leaned back. Chris shook his head and laughed. Fast times at Richmond High, right? Joe lay on his couch in the basement and flipped through the HBO channels before resting on one that was playing Inception from the beginning. It would be the fourth time he had watched it since it came to HBO in the beginning of the summer. He shrugged and took a sip of his rum and coke. A good movie is a good movie, he rationalized to himself. He checked his phone out of habit and saw a text waiting for him to be read as soon as he looked down at it. The text was from Jennifer. "I missed you," the text read. He texted back quickly. "I miss you too, Big Bird." He settled further into the couch and focused on the movie. Within seconds, Jennifer texted back. "So you're calling me Big Bird now? I'm not even going to ask where that's coming from, LOL. Your nicknames for me are so random. Anyway, can I ask you a crazy question?" "Go ahead," Joe replied. Another instantaneous response. "Come visit me this weekend? I know we agreed on every other weekend, but if you're not doing anything, I want you to make an exception just this once, LOL. Joe rolled his eyes. He did not want to choose his chill time to also be a dick to his semi-girlfriend, so he chose his next text message with care. "I actually may or may not be filming this weekend. I'll let you know when I do," Joe sent back. He didn't even have to look at the response that would come within seconds. It would be a frowny face followed by a lowercase OK. His phone vibrated. He looked down to confirm his suspicions and snorted. He was correct. He stuffed his phone back in his pocket and forgot about the conversation entirely. Joseph watched the entire length of the movie. He refilled his drink twice. By the time the film reached its conclusion, Joseph was pretty buzzed. He heard the door open and shut, and someone walked into the house. Joe figured it was his younger brother. He heard his feet move throughout the house above him. The door to the basement opened, and he turned and looked over the couch to watch his brother coming down the stairs. "What's up?" Kevin asked. "Not much, just watching Inception and drinking some good old rum and coke," Joseph replied. Kevin laughed as he walked over to the couch and plopped himself down. He leaned his head against a cushion and let out an exhausted sigh. "I just made out with 2 girls tonight." "At the same time," Kevin said. "Yeah? Where were you?" Joe asked. "Brian's party." "I'm pretty fucking smashed right now. Thank God I didn't drive. Fucking 2 girls." "At the same time," Kevin said again. "That's pretty awesome, I must say," Joe said. "It is. I feel pretty good about it. You know, I used to do shit like that back in high school," Joe said jokingly. Kevin looked at him. "And now you're drinking rum and coke while watching Inception at 2 o'clock in the morning on a Friday night." Joseph shrugged. "Yeah, I feel pretty good about it. Inception is probably one of the greatest movies in the past several years. If I was watching Green Lantern or something like that, I'd probably feel pretty hurt by the comment you just made. Inception, though, not going to happen." Kevin laughed and slapped his knee. He stood up and wobbled as he did. "I'm going to bed. I just wanted to come down here and brag about my latest accomplishment. Having done that, I'm going to retire," Kevin said as he headed for the stairs. "Good night," Joseph called after his brother. Joe looked at the TV. The credits were rolling. He looked at his drink. It was almost empty. He sat on the couch and did his best not to feel inadequate. "I gotta get the fuck out of here," he thought. He considered texting Jennifer back, but dreaded that decision. If he broke the agreement the two had made and went to her dorm 2 weekends in a row, Jennifer would read much too into it. He thought of his friends. Jimmy had already left for Virginia, which meant that he was crossed off the list. Christopher was in Towson for the weekend visiting his girlfriend. That left Shaun and Richard. He texted Shaun. "So when are the boys getting together to visit Richie Boy in his new castle and shit?" Joe turned the TV off and headed into his bedroom. He slid his basketball shorts off and fell into the bed. To his surprise, Shaun texted, even at the late hour that it was. LOL, it read. "Funny that you asked. I'm actually going to see him this Sunday." "Yes," Joe celebrated silently in his head. He texted Shaun back. "Oh, word? I think I might make that little tag-along. Whoever said Three's a Company wasn't lying, feel me?" "Ha ha ha. I'm leaving around noon. I'll scoop you up and then head to the train station. Sound good?" Shaun responded. "All right, sounds good. Later, gay boy," Joe texted Shaun back. He took his glasses off and put them on his nightstand. Within minutes, Joe was asleep. Saturday came and went with no hiccups. He worked in the morning and got out at 5 in the afternoon. He spent the rest of his day at home, watching TV and surfing the internet. He found a movie theater near Richard's dorm room that was playing Tree of Life, a film Joe had always had an interest in seeing. He contacted Richard about it, and he gave the thumbs up to go see it during the visit. He went to sleep at around midnight, which was early for Joe. He wanted to be ready by the time Shaun got to his house. Shaun was outside waiting for Joe at noon, as he had promised. Joe finished brushing his teeth and putting on his shoes and headed out the house. Shaun inclined his head towards Joe as he crossed the front of the car to get into the passenger seat. Is that the Calvin Klein jacket? Joe asked as he took his seat in the car. It is. It feels good, Shaun said with a smile. Perfect attire for New York. Perfect attire, Joe said. I concur. That's why I'm wearing it. When my wife goes to the closet and picks out clothes, she wears shit. I go to the closet and I wear the good stuff, Shaun said. No! Pulp Fiction reference, Joe giggled. He noticed the watch on Shaun's left wrist. Oh, fuck, and you got a watch too? Who the fuck are you now? Shaun shrugged and grinned as he drove through Joseph's neighborhood. Yeah, it's a fossil. $120, it ain't no big thing. Caleb was actually with me when I picked it out. We hang out now. Okay. You and Caleb go shopping together. That's kind of cool, Joe said. Well, I don't really know if you can call it that. You could say that I go shopping. I buy clothes and $100 watches while Caleb stands around and offers polite conversation, since he's a broke-ass fool. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to discredit him. He has a great fashion sense. I respect his opinion, which is why I bring him out, Shaun said. Is there a reason you have this sudden interest in clothes and shit? Joe asked. Sanem, Shaun said with a sheepish shrug. That's the easy answer. I want to live up to her expectations. She's not Legs, you know. Legs would accept anything. So I just want to do more to show Sanem that I care. That coupled with the fact that I'm really not spending money on anything else. My college was paid for by financial aid, so once November comes around, I'm supposed to get another $2,000 just for being enrolled in school. Damn, boy. What's good with spending that money on us? If you're just trying to throw money around, let's make something good with it. I'm telling you, fucking Entourage would be an awesome show. Or we could actually film a feature, Joe said. Shaun glared at Joe as his hands tightened on the steering wheel. Really, Joe? Really? I'm pretty sure it was me who wrote a 100-page screenplay that consisted of only the four of us. I'm pretty sure, I might be wrong. I'm pretty sure it was also me who offered to pay for the expenses that we would have to film the entire project. Mind you, the project that would take less than 3 fucking days to complete. And I'm also quite certain that it was you who rejected my idea, even though everyone else was on board. Joe sighed. I didn't reject your idea. I like the concept of filming a whole movie in a hotel room. The problem that I had with your script, which I was pretty clear about, was that nobody would understand what the hell is going on without a blatant plot insert at the beginning of the script. Like you would need your mother to call you as soon as you walked into the hotel room and congratulate you again for winning the competition. She would have to say the name of the competition and what the four of us actually received as a reward. It'd be way too forced. That's what I was trying to explain to you, he said. Whatever, Joe, Shaun said dismissively. I'm over it. I'm not in film anymore. That's why I'm not spending money on it. I spent $1,000 on No Haven and got nothing out of it. Now I'm finally in school as a psych major, and I spend money on clothes and my Persian girlfriend, and I'm completely okay with all of that. The two talked about inconsequential things for the rest of the drive to the train station. Joseph verbally approved of choosing the Hamilton station over the Trenton one. Shaun had been using the Trenton station for years. The Hamilton station was a little farther away, but it was far cleaner and more pleasant of an atmosphere. The train came within 6 minutes of getting to the station. Joe and Shaun found a seat in the back of the rear car. You remember the last time we were on a train heading to New York? Joe asked. Shaun groaned. Please don't fucking remind me. That was a horrible experience. What were you expecting to happen? It was Ford modeling. You thought they were going to look at your pictures and just sign you on the spot? Joe asked. I was 18. There's not much else I can say besides that, Shaun said. Remember how we met a friend of Jeremy Sisto? Joe asked. Correction, we met a friend of Jeremy's sister's mother who also happened to know Jeremy Sisto. I have no idea how we started talking to her, Shaun said. We must have been talking about film and she overheard us. You gave her our card, Joe said, laughing. I did do that. Then I went home and stared at our website, wondering if it was going to be good enough for fucking Jeremy Sisto. What the fuck was he going to do for us anyway? Introduce us to his agent? Doubts? Yeah, it was pretty stupid. We were young. The world is a much darker place now. Do you still have those cards? You ordered like 1,000 of them, didn't you? Shaun snorted. 250. And the website has probably been taken down by now. To tell you the truth, I'm afraid to type it in on Google. I don't want to find out that it's not there anymore. Does that make sense, he asked? Yeah. It's pretty fucking depressing how hopeful we all are. Pretty depressing, Joe said. Shaun laughed. Fucking Larry David. Anyway, change the subject before we get too down on ourselves. How are you and Jennifer doing? She's still not your girlfriend, right? She's not, Joe said. Are you taking advantage of that? What about that 17-year-old that was trying to fuck you at work? Joe laughed at the memory. That's actually a story I've been looking forward to sharing with you. You fucked her? Shaun asked excitedly. Nah. I got head from her in the parking lot, Joe said. Shaun exclaimed, No! That's awesome. Give me the details. Alright. Well, first off, she isn't 17 anymore. She turned 18 2 weeks ago, Joe said. Yo, when did you get that blowy? Shaun asked. Like 5 days ago, Joe replied. Shaun muttered to himself. Fucking conformist much. Joe ignored him and continued. So she comes up to me that day. Mind you, she has been dropping hints for the past month that her birthday had been coming up. The whole time, I've been a little indecisive about doing anything with her. Not only did the age thing bother me, but also I had a guilty conscience about Jennifer. I know she's not my girlfriend, at the same time, well, you know what I mean. Anyway, so she comes up to me and complains about how I didn't wish her happy birthday the week before. I told her that she wasn't working on her birthday, so that would be impossible to do so if I didn't see her on her birthday. So then she tells me how I could have texted her or left a comment on her Facebook, and I was like, I really didn't care that much to do any of that. Shaun laughed loudly at that and kicked his feet. I love the put-downs, he said excitedly. So an hour later, I'm behind the tech counter, and she walks over and comes behind the counter. And she's a cash register, so I tell her there's literally no reason for her to be over here. And she tells me that she's looking for a pen. So before I can say anything to that, she just reaches over to me and literally grabs my dick. And I remember thinking, thank God I'm already hard. Thank fucking God. You were already hard? Shaun asked, wrinkling his nose. Yeah, don't ask me why. It wasn't because of her. I can't remember, but I must have been thinking about some porn I'd recently watched before she approached me or something. I don't know. Anyway, so she literally grabs my dick and, strokes the length of it. Then she whispers in my ear about whether or not she could borrow my pen, which I thought was a pretty corny fucking line at the time. So I back up and look at her and I go you want to give me head after work? What? Shaun exclaimed. You said that? I did. It felt good, Joe said, smiling. You said that. I can't imagine you saying that to a female. I can't imagine it. You of all people, Shaun said in shock. What's that supposed to mean? I've been pimping these bitches since I was 5 years old. Flyest fruit man since Appleseed, Joe said. Shaun shook his head heavily. This is ridiculous. Okay, so continue. Tell me about the head. There's not much to say about that. The part where I thought of you was when we got in my car. I pulled my dick out and was like, so you going to start or... And then she grabs it. And as she starts lowering her head onto it, she looks at me real quick and says, don't come in my mouth all fast. Shaun clutched his stomach as he laughed wholeheartedly. Fucking 18-year-old whores. Fucking ridiculous. So where did you come? On her fucking hand. She used tissues to clean it up and shit. It was gay. The head wasn't bad, though, Joe said. That's cool. That's fucking ridiculous, though. I hate when bitches tell you what you can and cannot do. That's exactly what Natalia did. But you already know that story, Shaun said. I do know that one. Very sad indeed, Joe said, chuckling. I'm teaching the fucking Persian to give me head. Literally teaching her, Shaun said. How's that going? Joe asked. Slow progress. You should have seen the first time she did it. She put a blanket over her fucking head so I couldn't see. Shaun said as laughter escaped his lips. What? That's absurd, Joe said, joining in Shaun's laughter. I know! It looks so ridiculous. I almost felt bad for her because I was thinking how hot it must have gotten in there. She came up sweating. Joe gave an uproarious laugh at that. Did your bitch swallow at least? Shaun shook his head. Not there yet. She's only done it twice, I think, and both times I didn't finish from it. Like I said, slow progress. I'll make a whore of her yet, though. Count on that, or my name isn't Shaun the Huntmaster, Shaun snorted. Shaun the Huntmaster. More like Shaun the Cuntmaster. They arrived in New York City after an hour and 20 minutes train ride. Shaun led Joseph through the subway tunnels of New York all the way to Richard's new home. Richard's housing arrangement was inside of a tall building on the corner of some street on the west side of Manhattan. Joe regarded it carefully. Richard was waiting outside. He was wearing a t-shirt. His hands were stuffed in his pockets as he held his arms tight to his torso, trying to shield himself from the fall breeze. Shaun was the first to speak. The New York boy himself, Shaun said as he approached Richard with open arms. Sup, man, Richard said. He embraced Shaun briefly and let go. He nodded in Joe's direction. What's up, man? Joe said. Not much, just kind of cold. Waiting for you two to show up so I can go back inside, Rich said. Check this out, Joey. The New York boy doesn't wear jackets anymore. He's too cool for jackets now. You know, 'cause he's a New York boy, Shaun said as he playfully punched Rich. Motherfucker, you're just mad that I wasn't complimenting your stupid Calvin Klein jacket as soon as you showed up, Rich said. Shaun inched closer to him and sniffed. He eyed Richard menacingly. How's it look on me, though? Be honest, he said. Pretty fucking cool, actually, Rich said, smiling. Shaun jumped in the air and made a whooping noise. My toughest critic approves, everyone, he yelled to the street. Still need a fucking haircut, as always, Rich muttered under his breath. So let's go inside. I want to meet your gay roommate, Shaun said. The three headed inside. Richard signed them in and took them to the elevator. Shaun tittered with anticipation. The elevator stopped at the 7th floor, and Richard stepped off, followed quickly by Shaun and Joseph. He led them down a short hallway before stopping at a door. He pulled a card out and slipped it into the door and unlocked it. "After you," Richard said as he held the door open. Shaun walked in first. Joe entered after. The dorm was nice enough. It was plainer than Joe had expected. At the same time, he liked it much more than Jennifer's dorm room in Philly. He pictured himself living there. To his right, Joe saw someone sitting at a wooden desk typing on a laptop. He took him to be one of Richard's roommates. "Not bad," Shaun said as he paced into the open space. Let me introduce you to Travis, one of my roommates," Richard said. "Travis, these are my friends Shaun and Joe." "Hello," Joe said. "Hey, guys," Travis said politely. "How's it going, man? You taking good care of my friend here? He's new to New York, you know. Are you showing him the ropes?" Shaun asked. Travis chuckled at that and looked at Rich. "He's definitely getting there. He's not a fish out of water anymore, at least," he said. Shaun shrugged. "I've always supported works in progress." "Where's the one that thinks Christopher's hotter than me?" Shaun asked. "That would be Jacob." "He's in our room sleeping," Rich replied. "It's like 3 o'clock, Joe said. Travis laughed at Joseph. "Yeah, he likes to sleep in a lot." He lowered his voice. "Don't worry, you're not missing out on anything. He's not as cool as me." "He's kind of right, actually," Richard said, laughing lightly. "Obviously he's not that cool. Any gay guy who thinks Christopher is hotter than me can't be that cool," Shaun said. Joe shook his head while Richard and Travis exchanged a quick, humorous glance. "So what are you going to school for, Travis?" Joe asked. Travis had been typing sporadically during the whole introduction. At that moment he stopped and leaned back in his chair. He put his hands over his head and let out a deep breath. "Fashion," he said with a smile. "You know, that stereotypical major that every gay person goes to school for." "Hey, that's why they make stereotypes, right?" Joe asked sarcastically. Too true, Travis said. He looked at the 3 friends standing around him and asked, "So what are you guys going to do today?" "We're actually going to see a movie not far from here. Then probably go to a New York bar and shoot the shit like a bunch of good-natured tourists who aren't trying to look like tourists," Joe said. Travis laughed again. "He's funny, Richard," Travis said. Shaun snorted and muttered under his breath as he walked around the kitchen, opening cabinets. "I guess you could say that. I've seen funnier, like 18 times. That actually reminds me. I was going to ask you, do you know how to get to that independent movie theater not far from here? I think it's called Yardley Cinemas or something like that," Richard said to Travis. "Yep, it's really easy. You go out of this building, you turn left and walk about 5 or 6 blocks. Then you turn left onto 42nd Street and walk like 2 blocks. It'll be on your left," Travis said casually. "That's a lot of lefts," Shaun muttered as he closed another cabinet. He walked over to the group. "Where are the ramen noodles?" he asked the room at large. "What?" Richard asked. "I thought every male college dorm was equipped with a lifetime supply of ramen noodles." "Don't tell me it's just in the movies," Shaun said. Travis chuckled to himself and shook his head. "Both of your friends are pretty funny, Richard." "I like them," he said. "Yeah, they're pretty likable sometimes," Rich said after an intake of breath. "Well, I guess we should hit the road. I just wanted to introduce them to you and get a jacket." "Nice meeting you two. Come back again. Maybe next time we'll all go to a bar," Travis said with a big smile. Joe and Shaun said their goodbyes and followed Rich out of the dorm and into the elevator. Richard shoved his arms into his light brown jacket. "That was a pretty cool gay guy, if I do say so myself," Shaun said as Richard hit the button for ground level. He was actually. I liked him," Joe agreed. "I think I like anybody who likes our sense of humor. Literally anyone. If Joseph Stalin walked up to me and said, 'I saw your shit. You guys are fucking funny. You can come hang out in my crib anytime you want,' I'd be like, 'Okay,'" Shaun said. Richard turned to Shaun. "What about Hitler?" he asked. "Hitler's a no-go." Shaun shook his head. "I don't like Hitler jokes. You'll never see me make a Hitler joke, nor a Hitler reference. I cringe every single time a comedian mentions Hitler in a stand-up comedy or sketch. Cringe." "I see what you're saying, Shaun. I really do. But I have to ask, what's the fundamental difference between Joseph Stalin and Adolf Hitler?" Joe asked. "Well, Joe, that's a great question, and I thank you for asking it. 2 words. Schindler's List." The 3 followed Travis's directions all the way to the movie theater. It was a 20-minute walk. They bought their tickets separately and found seats in the lobby. They had 30 minutes before the movie started. Joe looked around the room and watched the assortment of people as they passed by. It was somewhat packed, especially for such a small theater. Every seat along the walls were taken. They had been lucky to get there early. An extremely old woman stood near them. She wobbled back and forth on her cane as she looked expectantly at Joseph and his friends. She let out an angry huff when none of them offered her their seat. He ignored her. Joe noticed an extremely attractive woman talking to a group of people that looked to be her family members. She was tall and had a flawless face that brimmed with a confident energy whenever she spoke. She wore a black skirt and black heels with a tight red blouse that was tucked in. She was gorgeous. Fucking A, Richie boy. Do you see the chick over in the corner? Shaun asked in a whisper. Yeah, I did. She's really fucking hot, Richard replied. God damn it, that's the kind of girl you want to go up and talk to. Like, she looks like someone you could actually have a conversation with. I fucking love it here. You made a good choice in moving, Richie boy, Shaun said. Maybe might be reading a bit too much into her. Just a little. We can all agree that she's attractive, but now you're just attaching personality traits that you don't even know she has, Joe interjected. Look at how she's talking to the people she's with. She's probably been to Paris, man. As a matter of fact, I can almost guarantee you she's been to fucking Paris, Shaun said. That's stupid. That's a very stupid guarantee to make about a person, Richard said. I'm going to ask her, Shaun announced. Richard snorted. He looked at Shaun and shook his head. No, you're not, he said definitively. I am too. I'm going to go up to her and strike up a conversation with her and ask her if she's ever been to Paris. I'm going to compliment her on her beauty and ask her what she does for a living, and then I shall ask her if she's ever been to Paris, Shaun said with his head held high. You're not going to do any of that, Richard said simply. As a matter of fact, you're going to sit here up until we're allowed to enter the actual movie theater, then you're going to watch the movie and leave and never see her again. And you're going to go home feeling like an idiot. Want to bet? A sly grin spread across Shaun's face. Bet me a beer tonight. I'm not going to bet you a beer because that might give you enough incentive to actually do it. Bet yourself a beer and I'll see if you'll do it, Rich said. I think it's kind of ridiculous that we're even entertaining this conversation. Everyone here knows that Shaun is too much of a pussy boy to strike up a conversation with that woman right there, standing on the floor there, which is why his fuck count is stuck at 13. He pissed, small, Joe said smirking. 14, you faggot, Shaun corrected angrily. So are you going to do it? Richard asked. Shaun stood up abruptly. He stretched out. He started off saying, I'm going to the bathroom. Shaun twisted on his feet and walked off, emphasizing a dignified posture. Joe shook his head after Shaun. Immediately, the old woman who had been standing close to them the whole time took Shaun's seat without a moment's hesitation. Joseph and Richard exchanged a short glance and did their best to suppress their laughter though some escaped. Joseph felt good in that moment. He was with a close friend that he hadn't seen in some time. He marked it down as a good moment in time. So how have things been, man? Joe asked. No complaints here. I've just been, going to classes and doing everything I'm supposed to be doing. My roommates take me out a lot to bars and shit, which is kind of cool, but because I get to see more of New York, Rich said. That is cool. You're not in Mount Holly anymore. You might as well make the most of it, Joe said. Yep, Rich said. The two sat together in silence and enjoyed each other's presence. The old woman was a huge intrusion on their intimate guy moment. She sat to the right of Rich. Joe did his best to continue to ignore her. So, I applied to the new school last week, I think, Joe said after some time passed. Oh, yeah? For the spring semester? Rich asked, his eyebrows raised. Yeah, I'm waiting to hear back from them, but I feel pretty good about it, Joe said. Well, your grades have always been better than mine. If I got in, you shouldn't have a problem, Rich said. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. If I get in, we should be roommates next semester. We could blow it up in New York and shit, Joe said. Richard nodded his head in agreement. Shaun appeared, squeezing his way over to the two through the crowded lobby. He had a huge smile on his face. Richard laughed at the expression. You look like such a clown, Joe said, laughing. Shaun looked at the old lady who had taken his seat and gave her his biggest fake smile. Then he looked at Joe and Richard. So, guess what I just did? Shaun said, his grin never leaving his face. You took a piss and didn't wash your hands, Richard guessed. You took a piss, didn't wash your hands, but wiped it on a nearby midget? Joe asked. The old woman scowled at the three and turned away from them, insulted. Joe found that humorous. I talked to the hot girl, Shaun beamed. No, you didn't, Rich said. Shaun nodded his head vigorously. I did. I most certainly did. And I can tell you that she has, in fact, been to Paris. She's also been to Norway, but who gives a fuck, right? Shaun said, his entire body emanated with satisfaction. How did you talk to her? Joe asked. There were 2 lines for the bathroom, a female line and a male line. I happened to be in the male line, and she is parallel to me in the female line. So I looked at her and I was like, this is my moment. So then she made eye contact with me and rolled her eyes, and I said something cool to her like, your perfume reminds me of my grandmother's. Richard snorted and clapped his hands. Joe chuckled. No, but seriously, I just said to her, bathroom lines, right? And that was all that was needed. She took care of the rest. She started going off about her about in her line of work, most of the clients she meets are in unusual places like bathroom lines and shit. And I ask her what she does, and she tells me she runs her own concierge service for tourists in New York. I'm not sure if you ignorant slobs know what a concierge is, but basically it's just a person who knows where all the cool shit is in the city. So I ask her, where's the best burger in town? And she didn't even think about it. She just said Minetta Tavern hands down. So we should definitely go there after the movie is over. At the same time, though, she said that we should go there early because it gets packed pretty quick. When did you find out that she went to Paris? Rich asked. I'm getting to that, my short little friend. So we went into the bathrooms. I took a piss, washed my hands. Well, not really washed my hands. I kind of just ran lukewarm water over them and wiped them off on a paper towel. Anyway, I come out the bathroom, and guess who's walking out the female bathroom at the same exact time? The hot chick. So she gives me a wink and jokes about how we should make a habit of this, and I'm just thinking we should make a habit of me being inside of you. But I didn't say that out loud, of course. Then I told her that I promised my friends that I would find out if you've ever traveled to Paris, and she laughed and told me yes. Paris and Norway, she said. Shaun put his hands on his hips and puffed out his chest. I win, he declared. I doubt any of that happened, Richard said dismissively. He probably thought up that whole story while he was in line for the bathroom, Joe said. I can just picture him rubbing his hands together saying, I'll show them all. Joe laughed as Shaun pouted. I think the line for the theater is forming. Let's go find a spot, Joe said. The three got up and headed to where the line was forming. That fucking old woman was such a bitch, Rich said when the three got away from her. Wasn't she? She's getting all mad when none of us offered her our seat. Like, bitch, I don't give a fuck how old you are. This is America, Joe said. She took my fucking seat, Shaun said, frowning. They talked about her for a while longer as the line was ushered into the new movie theater. They found good seats close to the center. The movie started soon after. Joseph settled into his chair and felt anticipation creeping through his body. He respected Terrence Malick as a filmmaker and had been extremely excited to see his latest work. Who's ready for 2001 Space Odyssey Part 3? Shaun whispered as the previews finished and the movie began. The movie itself was quite a lot to take in for Joe. It was unlike any movie he had ever seen. He was swept away by the outstanding cinematography of the whole film. He questioned whether or not he liked the pacing of it, and took note of the lack of a concrete plot. The movie played for 2 hours and 20 minutes. Joe sat and paid attention through every second of it. The music composition was fantastic. As the film ended, the most resounding thought that went through Joe's head was that he wanted to see it again. Shaun and Richard both stood up quickly when the credits started rolling. Joe followed them out of the theater. The two in front of him both shook their heads angrily and muttered to themselves about the absurd spectacle of what they had just witnessed. 2001 Space Odyssey meets this boy's life. That's how he should have pitched it, Shaun said jokingly. Holy fuck, that was a huge fucking waste of time, Rich groaned. What did you think, Joe? Shaun asked. There was a lot going on. There was next to no linear narrative, which is pretty unique. I'm probably going to have to see it again just to get a stronger opinion of it, Joe said. Why the fuck would you want to do that? Shaun asked. The three headed towards the exit herded by the crowd. Shaun fell in line with the attractive woman from earlier. He turned around and winked quickly at Joe and Rich and then spoke to her. You again, Shaun said. The woman spread out her hands in surprise and gave a gay laugh. Me again, she said. What did you think? Shaun asked. I liked it. I thought it was quite captivating, the woman said. Captivating is a good word for it, Shaun agreed. So are you boys off to Minetta Tavern now? You might be able to catch a seat at the bar if you hurry, she said. Well, I don't think I can pass up the opportunity to eat the best burgers in New York City. According to you, that is, Shaun said. Trust me, she said, laughing. This is what I do for a living. Anyway, good luck. It was nice meeting you. The woman departed with her company. Shaun looked at Rich and Joe with a huge smirk spread across his lips. So, on to Minetta Tavern? Shaun asked. Minetta Tavern was around 20 minutes away from using the subway. Richard looked up the address on his iPhone and navigated the subway maps like a veteran New Yorker. When they arrived, it was a little after 7. The place was already packed. The bar was lined with customers, and the hosts and hostesses ran around the place looking stressed. Shaun entered and asked one of the hosts about the waiting line. The man just rolled his eyes and told him that they were only accepting reservations at the moment. He suggested that the three wait for an opening at the bar, though he did not promise how long that might take. We're already here, and there's supposed to be good fucking burgers. I say we do it, Shaun said to Joe and Rich. Rich gave an indifferent shrug. These better be some fucking good burgers, Joe said. They headed off to the corner of the bar and found 2 empty bar stools. Rich and Joe sat down on them, leaving Shaun standing. Joe looked at the people sitting at the bar and then at the 4 people ahead of them that were waiting to sit at the bar. It's going to be a long wait, I think, Joe said. Yeah, I can definitely see that happening, Rich said. Best burgers in New York City. Best burgers, Shaun repeated.